Salutations, people of the internet, welcome to the database. Avast, as for this video, I wanted to dedicate a specific month for our nautical friend under the sea. As a kid growing up in the 2000s, everyone, including myself, became massive fans of the absorbent sponge. It's still, to this day, one of the most quotable programs on television. Hell, I memed this show not too long ago when I reviewed the classic Spyro trilogy. Initially aired on May 1st, 1999, SpongeBob aired after that year's Nickelodeon's Kid Choice Awards show, and it became a massive success for the network right off the bat. And me telling you how successful this show has become would be an understatement, as there are tons of internet personalities, much as myself, that love to praise and critique SpongeBob for all of its milestone merits. So, to stand out of the crowd a little bit, I'm declaring the month of May as the month of Sponge. Why I chosen the month of May? Simple really. SpongeBob aired on May of 1999. I was born 2 years later in May of 2001. Whenever the month of May comes around the corner, I would always have SpongeBob on my mind. And that this is the first animated program that I was exposed to in my childhood. Basically, the stars all align when it comes to me, SpongeBob, and the month of May. For every month of Sponge, this gives me the opportunity to just solely talk about anything SpongeBob related until I have nothing else to talk about with him. Whether if it's just talking about the TV series and movies or his vast library of video games, the possibilities for the month of Sponge are endless. But for now, for this first installment, I'll stick with something simple by discussing my personal experiences with the yellow square and how it affects me to this day. I can't recall what would be my first ever SpongeBob episode I watched, but I do remember this. Whenever the sponge starts to air on my old TV as a kid, my ass would be plopped and silent in front of it as I bask in awe of the Yellow Boy's bizarre adventures. The show revolves around our nautical sponge and his misadventures, mostly involving his dim-witted but means well starfish Patrick, his grumpy neighbor Squidward, the scientifically genius karate master Sandy Cheeks, the money-loving Mr. Krabs, and many others. Listing down all the characters that SpongeBob interacts with in the show would take us all day, but these are the main cast of critters that we see most often. Whatever antics the other characters are doing, i.e. Squidward playing the clarinet, in comes the sponge to spice up their day. And what I like about the dynamics between SpongeBob and the characters that I mentioned are the exchanges they have with one another. This becomes prominent in the early seasons as the writing for those early years revolve around the clash in different personalities between SpongeBob and whoever his character be. When I think of SpongeBob, I see him as someone who is filled with naive optimism, someone who sees the good in everything and good in everyone, and someone who likes to make each day fun as the last. Pair him up with the polar opposite of his personality in Squidward, and you probably have, in my opinion, the best dynamic relationship the SpongeBob series has to offer, i.e. pizza delivery from season 1. This is what probably the best example of a SpongeBob Squidward dynamic episode I can think of. It starts with Mr. Krabs having Squidward and SpongeBob delivering a pizza made out of Krabby Patties.
Don't deliver. We don't deliver, but you do.
And this is Squidward's biggest mistake in the episode, letting SpongeBob drive.
Back it up!
Back it up!
What follows is a journey on foot between the squid and the sponge, as they serve as the main source of all the jokes in the episode. SpongeBob using his optimistic wits and pioneer knowledge to find their way back to their destination.
It's not just a boulder. It's a rock. A rock. A rock.
While Squidward just tells Sponge his pioneer's ideas are ridiculous and just have the pizza for themselves.
Will you let go of that stupid pizza already?
I can't It's for the customer.
Who cares about the customer?
I do.
Well, I don't.
Squidward.
What follows at the end of the episode was SpongeBob's optimism being shattered after the customer refuses to take his order over a drink, and Squidward at his badassness as he forces the pizza onto the jerk after seeing his annoying friend getting emotionally hurt. It is such a funny and heartwarming episode that shows the different layers of these different characters. Like many, most long-running shows, SpongeBob wasn't immune to the concept that a certain neighborino incidentally invented, Flanderization.
Hello, neighborino to the north. I sure like the cut of your gibberish.
Cohen
Idly oodly, idly oodly.
Flanderization is simply described as having to amplify one character trait of a certain character and simplify the character to only that trait. Example? Going back to Ned Flanders, he was once known as a goody two-shoe, nice and kind neighborino, and the opposite and foil to Homer Simpson. But in the newer seasons of The Simpsons, his character trait is reduced to being a Christianity-obsessed man. So, what does this mean for the characters of SpongeBob? Well, remember the complexity of the dynamic between Squidward and SpongeBob that I mentioned earlier? That's now reduced to SpongeBob showing up and just annoy Squidward's day.
Oh no!
Yep, it is.
Is it time already to ruin Squid's day?
This applies to all the other main characters too, where Patrick becomes more dumb than cleverly stupid, Mr. Krabs being more money hungry than before, and Sandy leaning more towards her Texas background and science than her karate. Though that doesn't mean it ruins their characters entirely, it's just that these were made to garner attraction to newer fans. Though what makes SpongeBob appealing to me, and even to this day, was how timeless a lot of the episodes feel. Even though I don't watch the newer episodes nowadays, I still go back to the first 5 to 6 seasons of SpongeBob for my sense of nautical enjoyment. Yeah, I said it. I enjoy seasons 4 and 5 of SpongeBob. As many people would like to point out, the peak of SpongeBob in terms of the show's quality struck between the first 3 seasons, which I would like to disagree. Sure, the first 3 seasons range from good to amazing, but for me, I couldn't forget my nostalgic feelings for season 4 and 5, as these were the 2 seasons of SpongeBob I grew up with the most. And I tried to stray away from using the word nostalgia in videos where I talk about older media, as there are tons of stuff where some people may find nostalgic to them means different for me. For God's sake, I only started to become a fan of Crash Bandicoot and Spyro last year. And these two have been franchises since the 90s. If I were to split the different eras of SpongeBob, if I were to review different seasons and episodes from separate videos, I would separate them as such. The golden era of SpongeBob will consist of seasons 1 to 5, where my enjoyment of SpongeBob was at an all-time high, and each season has amazing batches of episodes, with only small hiccups of episodes being average at best. These seasons understood the characters and their personalities the most, and while after the first movie there were small changes to them during season 4 and 5, it's either for the sake of the episode's plot, or the slow burn of diddly old Flanders.
Knock that off, you two. It's time for church.
The Dark Age of SpongeBob consists of seasons 6 to 9A, the first half of season 9. A long stretch of period, believe it or not, where there were a ton of episodes that showcased the main cast being out of character. Also, this was where the animation becomes way too stiff for the characters to move around on screen, and where the pacing felt like an all-time slow for 11 minutes. The Rubber Band era, consisting of the second half of season 9 to whatever is current as of writing. For season 9B to 11, this was where the show starts to hit its stride once more, for the first time in a long while. This was where the show creator, Steven Hillenburg, came back to the show after working on the second SpongeBob movie. It's here where the series became more reliant on past references from the show's earlier run. The dialogue for the characters feel watered down and way childlike than the Golden Era and Dark Ages. And this is where the infamous spin-offs gave birth, for worst and Unfortunately, during production of season 12, Steven Hillenburg would pass away in 2018 from ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. And since his passing, his name would forever be credited as the show's executive producer, a nice way to keep his name alive in the modern day. Speaking of Steven Hillenburg, there is one thing to point out when it comes to the change in tone of SpongeBob between all the 3 eras that I mentioned. Steven wanted to end the series with 3 seasons and a finale movie, but due to the intense popularity of SpongeBob in 2004, Nickelodeon wanted to keep the show alive for a little while longer. So Steven had his friend Paul Tibbitt as showrunner for most of the series up to his absence, as he oversees operations during seasons 4 and 5 and all the seasons during the Dark Age and Rubber Band eras of the series. When it comes to whether or not Steven Hillenburg wanted spin-offs for the series, I don't want to get into that, so to lighten the mood a bit, I want to discuss some of my favorite episodes of the show in quick length. So I mentioned pizza delivery as being one of my favorite episodes of season 1 of SpongeBob, but another episode from season 1 that I want to bring up was Rip Pants, an episode that revolves around SpongeBob impressing Sandy from Larry the Lobster by intentionally ripping his pants. It's an example of having one running joke done well throughout an 11-minute run. And it caps off with an amazing musical number inspired by the Beach Boys' Be True to Your School.
When Big Larry came round just to put him down, SpongeBob turned into a clown.
For season 2, you kinda expect me to talk about the show's magnum opus, Band Geeks, but that episode had been praised to death on this internet, so I decided to swerve a bit. So for this season, I chosen Artist Unknown. As a fellow artist on the internet going to a university and majoring in art, this episode means a lot to me. It serves as a perfect lesson of having to loosen yourself up when it comes to artistic creativity, and when it comes to following artistic rules by the book, it should only apply to the general fundamentals of art, like what canvas to use and the basics of drawing geometrical shapes.
Circle 1. Am I going too fast for you, SpongeBob?
Well, first I draw this head, then I erased some of the more detailed features. And 1, 2, 3, a circle thingy.
Season 3 goes to Sailor Mouth. By God, this show is so funny as an adult, especially now knowing what swear words these characters have been using.
Hello, customers! Nice day we're having, huh?
And it's just a funny episode overall, but not as funny as Wet Painters. Good lord, you want an episode as an example of having the perfect series of jokes and setups and punchlines with a splice of subverting expectations? This is the episode for you. In a separate video, I want to dedicate some time where I go out of my way of defending why seasons 4 and 5 mean a whole lot to me as a kid and nowadays. But for now, as a sneak peek and to end this segment off, I want to share with you my favorite episodes from seasons 4 and 5. For season 4, it has to be Have You Seen the Snail? You want an episode that hits you and the feels in the right ways? This is peak emotional taking. Having to lose or miss a beloved pet can always be heartbreaking for everybody. And I too have my share of tears every time I revisit this episode. But no worries. All the emotions are all balanced with some great jokes here and there, and it all tops off with a heart-wrenching musical number playing during the montage.
Gary, I'm sorry I neglected you. Oh, I never expected you to run away and leave me feeling this empty.
Season 5 was a tough one when it comes to picking a favorite, and this has got to be the most experimental season of SpongeBob I've seen up until the Rubber Band era. Also, saying right now, Season 4 and 5 probably has the best art style in the series. Second place being Season 2 and 3, third place being the first season. 4 and 5 just had this best balance in having the characters be on model, but not having them feel too loose like the Rubber Band era seasons. So, For this season, I guess I can go with Roller Cowards. I can relate to this episode the most, cause while I hardly ever go to amusement park rides, the ones here in Hawaii aren't as awesome as something like Six Flags in Texas, you know. But I know for sure there were moments like what SpongeBob and Patrick share, where they just find the smallest excuses to not go on the rides, or find excuses to not do things they plan on doing, and I find that adorable. But SpongeBob vs. the Patty Gadget has to be another favorite from Season 5. Having a whole episode short, yes short, Season 5, keep up. Having the whole episode short being in clever rhyme was so awesome, as I'm kind of a sucker for stuff in media being in rhyme. And the story between the sponge and the machine was cool to witness, especially when the story was narrated by Patchy the Pirate, played by the voice of SpongeBob, Tom Kenny, who also voices Spyro the Dragon.
Now all that's left is... Huh? The 7 Trials of Monkey Lagoon?
So that was my experience with the lovable SpongeBob SquarePants. At least my love for the sponge during the first 5 seasons, aka the golden era of SpongeBob. And just describing some of my favorite episodes of this time era goes to show how much the little sponge means so much to me as a part of my life. There won't be a ranking for this video, seeing that this is more of a retrospective of my history with the sponge, but whenever I decide to review separate episodes of the show in short form videos, that's where I'll give proper rankings. But I guess I can give letter rankings for the episodes I briefly talked about here. I'll give you guys a few minutes to see the letter ranks on the screen right now. Subject may change when I go into further detail for each one of them separately. As of writing, we still have a bit more time to celebrate the first annual Month of Sponge, so I figured that I would give a video game review based on the Absorbent Sponge. You may think I would review Battle for Bikini Bottom first, seeing as that's the most popular SpongeBob game, but I want to do something different. That and I need more time to fully 100% complete Battle for Bikini Bottom and record footage on the original and rehydrated versions. Instead, I'll be reviewing the latest SpongeBob video game in the media, SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shake. It's a neat standalone video game that shares many aspects and inspirations from Battle from Bikini Bottom, but is it as good or better than that game? Yes and no. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I'm Christopher James, and I'll see you next time.
SpongeBob SquarePants, SpongeBob SquarePants, second season, SpongeBob second season, SpongeBob second season, now on DVD, complete second season, are you ready, are you ready, SpongeBob second season,